Never again will you be capable of ordinary human feeling. Everything will be dead inside you. Never again will you be capable of love or friendship or joy of living or laughter or curiosity or courage or integrity. You will be hollow.
Whoever thought the guy who cosplayed his sister on Twitter could write about deep psychological trauma? Fujimoto is not the type to shy away from diving into darker themes in his manga, the kind of stuff you don't usually see in the shonen genre. And when it comes to his approach to writing manga, his greatest strength lies in his subtlety. Whether it's through deliberate choices in how he paces uncomfortable moments, or how he includes things that make you question if they're actually important, or if it's just Fujimoto indulging in chaotic genius. Even if you do want to question why certain things seem unsettling, you choose not to, because there's no way he'd go that far, right?
Incorrect.
What's interesting about Fujimoto's writing style is that seemingly throwaway details actually come back to punish you for not confronting them for what they are. It's a subversion technique that derails the stereotypical shonen we expect we're reading. While other anime manga might include certain themes for shock value, edginess, or to sneak in some cheap fan service with the excuse of, no, it actually plays a very important role in the story, Fujimoto doesn't sensationalize or glorify the sensitive themes he includes. And although it comes off as disturbing or even excessive at times, he knows how to make the viewer completely immersed so that they end up having a visceral reaction when the narrative devolves into utter despair. And one of the best examples is how he handled Makima's character. Even before Chainsawman was fully conceived, Fujimoto had his sights set on exploring a unique kind of female evil. In an interview, Fujimoto revealed how he based the dynamic between Denji and Makima on child abuse documentaries he watched. When talking about an orphanage, he said, "Even when they reach high school, they still don't know what it means to have a mother. Unless a child receives motherly love that only they can receive, they will continue to seek it. But kids will project the image of a mother on a woman they're close to, like their dorm caretaker. When the caretaker resigns and leaves, the kid will behave cheerfully as usual, but their diary is overflowing with the message, 'Don't go.' I saw this in the character of Denji." Although part 1 of the manga ended a while ago, the subsequent fan perception of Makima is extremely polarized. You have the side that believes she was actually attracted to Denji, the side that doesn't even care whether or not she's a predator and instead wishes they were Denji, and the side that understands the full extent of her character and either despise or pity her. Fujimoto intended to create a story about what happens when a vulnerable teenager meets a woman who only sees him as a tool she can exploit. And the consequences are devastating because of what Makima is meant to represent. A mother distorted. But there is one scene where Fujimoto exposes the pain of childhood trauma in the worst way possible. This is the moment when Makima shatters a boy's psyche just because she can, and how she ruins his chances of ever becoming a fully functional human being. Makima's first manga appearance occurs after we've met Denji, our main protagonist, and have gotten a basic grasp on his situation. He's an orphan who hunts down creatures called devils to pay off his debts. After befriending one devil named Pochita and nearly dying in battle, he forges a contract in which he takes Pochita's heart and is capable of transforming into the Chainsaw Devil. Denji's upbringing is a major aspect of his character, since it left him with a deeply ingrained sense of ignorance. The most significant gap in his understanding is how he doesn't know the difference between platonic love and romantic love, stemming from his lack of healthy relationships when he was younger. A parent is one of the only sources of unconditional love humans have when they're young, but instead, all Denji had was an abusive father who ended up offing himself while Denji was still a child. Thus, Denji was left to fend for himself and live in poverty. While barely earning enough money to afford a slice of bread, Denji remarks how he heard it's normal to eat sliced bread with jam on it. These early lines are important since they show how Denji was stripped of a standard childhood, causing his perception of normalcy to be an unachievable pipe dream. Although he ends up feeling some companionship in his friendship with Pochita, Denji recognizes he's missing something. He longs to have a girlfriend like other guys his age and hopes he could at least hug a girl before he dies. So when Makima first shows up and easily fulfills this impossible wish, Denji understandably latches onto her. But we as the audience can see how Makima's treatment of Denji is patronizing. and comes off as somewhat insincere. In order to craft a deeply disturbing antagonist, something needs to always feel off. There should be hints that Makima has a hidden agenda, without any direct proof confirming whether or not her motives are truly malicious. This buildup of suspense is perfectly suited for Fujimoto's style, since he's known for his unique visual storytelling that's inspired by his love of cinema. A lot of his mangas read like a movie because he uses simple backgrounds with multiple panels on each page dedicated to stretching out a single moment in time. Fujimoto has stated that he wanted to mimic a documentary style with Chainsaw Man to heighten the emotional drama. For Makima's case, he employs a subtle technique of pauses to create a sense of silence whenever she appears. This purposefully shapes our view of her as an ominous and abnormal figure compared to the other characters. Denji makes a contract and turns into a devil hybrid. Then, a faceless figure approaches the scene. We see a chilling shot of the figure's eyes, which can weirdly identify what Denji has become just by his scent. Finally, her face is revealed, and she smiles. A disarming but calculated expression. Denji, already vulnerable, immediately reveals his weakness by asking her to hold him, and she hugs him without a second of hesitation, seeing it as an easy way to cement herself in his mind. She provides an ultimatum. Either he can be kept by her as a human pet and join public safety, or be put down this instant as a devil. What's interesting is that Makima quickly shifts her approach, bluntly telling Denji that she'll feed him. She recognizes that the promise of survival might not be enough to persuade him, but after looking at his malnourished state, she knows that the offer of a meal might make him desperate enough to comply. I think one important thing to consider is how Makima's gender contributes to her manipulation. Denji's lack of interest in men means that a male Makima wouldn't have achieved the same emotional and psychological grip over him. And Makima canonically possesses a feminine charm, as well as a confident demeanor which causes others in the division to either respect her, like her, or be intimidated by her. She never loses her composure or shows any unpleasant emotions to others. So much so that it lacks any natural human factor. But Denji won't pick up on this because he's already in love with Makima. He doesn't care if she doesn't treat him with respect as a person, as long as she's kind and doesn't abandon him. Denji is heavily infatuated with Makima and holds on to the hope that if they become closer, he can eventually experience physical intimacy with her. If we interpret Chainsaw Man as a story about a deprived child seeking female compassion, then it's a bit too on the nose that Denji's first goal relates to a woman's chest. It is a symbol deeply tied to motherhood, representing the primary source of nourishment for an infant and, by extension, the first loving act of service that bonds a mother to her child. Denji lacked a maternal figure, someone who could have instilled in him a foundational sense of security and self-worth during his childhood. So now, what Denji is subconsciously desiring is that symbol of nurturing motherly care. And that's partly why Denji feels so underwhelmed even when he gets the chance to do what he wanted. He experiences the first instance of disillusionment in life. Reaching his goal didn't feel as good as he thought it would, a notion he openly expresses to Makima. And she sees this as the perfect chance to provide Denji with basic life advice, fueling his perception of her as a trustworthy superior figure, and 2, ensure that he continues to depend on her by stating the obvious fact that intimacy only feels good with someone you know well. Then, she frames herself as the partner Denji should strive to get to know better. Well, hold up.
Jimmy, you're within 20 feet of children. Where's your shirt?
Please don't make me wear it.
Who has the number to his parole officer?
This shade of blue is disgusting.
Yet Makima still denies Denji anything beyond a chest grab as she finally reveals the main objective she requires of him: to eliminate the Gun Devil, an overpowered threat that's been strengthened due to rising human fear. This push and pull strategy is one method Makima employs to keep Denji on a tight leash. Withholding constant affection and only offering it when you need something is a common tactic abusers use to maintain control and keep victims dependent until they're discarded. And what's the treat Makima uses to maintain Denji's continued submission? A wish for anything he wants. When Denji's first kiss with a coworker is ruined, Makima steps in to comfort him, once again applying the earlier method of teaching Denji basic life lessons like a parent would. She tells him how he'll be able to forget the bad experiences once he has good experiences in the future. This heart-to-heart works in Makima's favor as planned, since from this moment on, Denji resolves to use his promised wish to get with Makima. However, what prompts Denji to begin developing self-awareness and reflect on his current position in life is when he meets a normal girl his age. Granted, she ends up being a trained spy who was sent to retrieve his chainsaw heart, but Denji doesn't initially know this. Reze offers Denji a glimpse of what a normal teenage romance is like. She always smiles at him, laughs when she finds him charming, and outright flirts with him. More importantly, she slowly sheds light on how messed up Denji's situation is. She points out how Denji is only 16 years old and should be in high school, and Denji finds himself wishing he could have attended school with her, admitting how he thinks he would have found it fun, until he catches himself, forcing himself to remember that his heart is supposed to belong to Makima. After Reze sneaks Denji into her high school late at night, she's shocked to find out that he's never even attended grade school, and explains how he's practically just a kid. Normally, kids his age are studying for college admissions, hanging out with friends, or joining a club. Meanwhile, Denji is risking his life every day hunting devils. And for what? The bare minimum of 3 meals a day and a place to sleep. After Reze reveals her true identity and loses the fight with Denji, he still chooses to save her. She prepares to leave, explaining that she must return to her superiors after failing her mission. However, for the first time, Denji expresses a desire for independence. He offers to run away with Reze, even if it means leaving Makima behind. Yet, Reze already acknowledged that running away is pointless, since Makima had her sights set on Denji, cementing her relentless control. And Reze was right. Before she can even reach the meetup spot Denji chose, Makima appears in all her terrifying glory, eliminating Reze for good. Denji's inability to pursue a normal life with Reze shows a key moment of development. He's willing to abandon the life he had originally seen as enough, but now, even the chance for a different, truly normal life is ruined through Makima's interference. This highlights the opposition between Makima and Reze, not only in their political rivalry of securing chainsawman for their countries, but also in their thematic contrast. Reze serves as both a mirror and foil to both Makima and Denji. We find out Reze was a product of training and inhumane experimentation where the government turned her into a weapon they could exploit. Her sole purpose was to serve her government, but just as she taught Denji he's allowed to ask for more in life, Denji gave her a chance to escape her oppressors, a chance for both of them to experience a normal, loving human relationship. When debating whether Makima had genuine emotions or not, there's already a big scene that people look at, which we'll talk about in a bit. But there's something about the scene where Reze is taking her last breaths and struggling to pull the pin to transform. Instead of abruptly moving Reze's hand away, Makima grabs her hand and slowly moves it down. To me, this moment hammers in the image of Makima's suffocating power, but it also depicts her sympathy towards someone who reminds her of herself. I don't think she truly cared about Reze having a painless death, but rather than slap her hand away or slowly crush it down, she's willing to touch Reze gently to tell her to give up peacefully. Every other move Makima makes in the manga is meticulously calculated. Every touch she gives Denji is designed to reinforce her dominance in his mind. Yet now, Reze has caused there to be 2 images in Denji's mind when he thinks of girls. After Reze's death, Denji is so traumatized that he can never fall in love again. Wait. While Reze does not fully break Denji's attachment to Makima, she plants the seeds of doubt and shows him an alternative to the toxic dynamic he shares with Makima. She introduces him to the concept that he deserves and is rightfully allowed to strive for more in life. For example, a family. Makima carefully planned every aspect of Denji's new life at public safety. The first, his living arrangement. Power, the Blood Devil Fiend, and Aki, an older co-worker, are ordered to live with Denji in one apartment, and it's this forced proximity that enables Denji to gradually bond with both Aki and Power. Through this setup, which Makima orchestrated, Denji begins to experience healthy familiar relationships for the first time. something that was so far removed from his previously isolated and deprived existence. Aki takes on the role of the responsible older brother, offering Denji mature guidance as well as equal footing in their friendship. And Power adopts the role of a troublesome younger sister, constantly getting into petty fights with Denji, but also bringing a sense of chaos and lightheartedness into his life. Denji's relationship with Power is particularly important because while Reze couldn't quite break his attachment to Makima, Denji's deepening connection with Power causes him to become aware of another type of love he can experience with a female gender. Not the romantic, but the platonic. After Reze's death, Makima suddenly suggests taking Aki, Power, and Denji on a trip to Enoshima. Like I said earlier, Makima is constantly applying a push-pull method to keep Denji emotionally dependent and yearning for her attention. So after everything that happened with Reze, she seems to realize that she has to throw him a treat to keep him hooked and redirect his focus back onto her. But just as things start to fall into place, footage of Denji's battle with Reze is publicized in the news, which throws a wrench in Makima's plans. Instead of a getaway, public safety has to prepare for an incoming wave of foreign enemies, all heading to Japan to try and take out Denji and steal his chainsaw heart. And it's within this arc that Denji's unquestioning devotion to Makima is broken. After their encounter with the Darkness Devil, Power is completely traumatized. A weaker devil like her will instinctually be terrified when confronting one of the all-powerful Primal Fear Devils. So even after they escape hell, she's unable to perform any basic tasks for herself because she feels like she's being watched. It's during this period where Makima offers Denji the choice for them to go on the original trip alone, which is something he previously would have jumped at the opportunity for. But now, he hesitates and expresses how he feels responsible for taking care of Power. Even Aki is surprised that Denji chooses to remain home. We also see Denji act even more out of character as he's selfless and patient with Power. He doesn't get annoyed or lash out at her constant need to confirm that she's safe. Instead, he reassures Power that he doesn't hate her for being the reason that he couldn't go on the trip. He gives in to her demands to help her take a bath and helps her get dressed. This leads to Denji realizing that he didn't feel excited even though he had physical contact with a girl, which marks a subtle but huge turning point for him. His hesitation to abandon Power in her fragile state demonstrates his newfound maturity and emotional depth. Denji is starting to prioritize someone else's well-being over his own desires, a stark contrast to the selfish goals which he placed above all else earlier in the manga. His bond with Power becomes a perfect example of philia, a platonic love that's built on trust, care, and mutual support. And his willingness to sacrifice his personal desires for Power's sake, while still unsure why he's doing it, signals that Denji is beginning to form his own moral compass that isn't guided by his loyalty to Makima. What makes Denji's character arc different from many other shonen protagonists is that he didn't start off with a grand selfless goal. His motivations are more short-sighted. Fujimoto satirically comments on the shallow incentive that drives Denji forward, since it seems childish compared to the tragic motivations of other members in the agency. However, Denji's shifting physical desires aren't just for comedic purposes. Fujimoto uses them to subvert the typical shonen narrative centered on developing inner strength, focusing instead on how Denji navigates and makes up for his stunted childhood development during his teenage years. For simplicity's sake, let's look at a diagram. Maslow's hierarchy of needs ranks foundational human necessities, with each layer building off the next until you reach a state of self-actualization. In other words, when a person reaches their full potential, free from any obstacles that prevent a fulfilling life. You have the basic needs of survival and safety near the bottom, which are all things Denji receives once he joins public safety. When Reze prompts Denji to begin questioning what he truly wants, he makes his own independent decision to run away with her. This marks the beginning of Denji's psychological growth, as he starts exploring his own identity and aspirations. When he forms close, healthy connections with Aki and Power, he continues to ascend the hierarchy, and matures further into a more independent and self-aware individual. While Denji's emotional maturity allows him to understand unconditional empathy, it also causes him to internalize a very problematic ideology, one which will cause his downfall. Denji wants to live in ignorance. When reflecting on his previous battles, Denji realizes how he would start feeling guilty if he knew about the past and circumstances of everyone he eliminated. At the same time, he decides that he doesn't need to confront the trauma his mind is trying to repress. And it's this decision which enables Makima to completely destroy Denji's psyche. Makima realizes Denji is starting to separate himself from her, and she decides not only to push him all the way back down the hierarchy, but to make sure he can never get back up again. Right when Makima's careful control over Denji shows cracks, the Gun Devil arc takes place. While Aki was driven by revenge against the Gun Devil who murked his family, his growing bond with Denji in power causes him to abandon his life's mission. He asks if all three of them can be withdrawn from the upcoming battle. Aki's decision unknowingly interferes with Makima's ulterior plan, which is why her extremely cold and stern reaction is laced with subtle manipulation. She has to reassert control over him while still masking her frustration with professionalism. In Makima's office, she's drawn as an imposing figure. Her presence and words dominate the entire panel. Aki nervously realizes that he can't stop Makima from simply kicking him off the team and keeping Denji in power. Makima also manipulates Aki by saying that he should leave the room since he quit, and that any following information about the Gun Devil is classified from civilians, thus exploiting his lifelong trauma against him. It's pointless for him to abandon Denji in power since it was never about his own safety in the first place. And Makima dangles the very information Aki has been obsessively chasing throughout the manga. So he relents and gives in, exactly as Makima expected him to. Soon after, Aki's contract devil grants him a vision of the future, one where both he and Power are fated to be killed by Denji. Determined to save everyone, Aki decides to approach Makima for help. One cool detail is how Makima is the only one animated outside of the panels during the beach exchange, implicitly hinting how she always had the upper hand in what was going to occur. We learn that Makima possesses a form of mind control, which she used to make Aki have a crush on her and have him easily comply with her demands throughout the entire story. When Aki begs her to help him save Power and Denji, she seizes the opportunity to fully turn him into her pawn. Makima issues a direct command for Aki to create a contract with her. The next sequence is extremely unsettling because Fujimoto uses paneling to mimic slow-paced visual shots. The sound of knocking continuously overlaps with the text bubbles, overshadowing the page and building suspense. The reader's thought process during this scene mirrors Denji's. While we hope that the person ringing the doorbell isn't Aki, we slowly come to the realization that something isn't right. Denji hears the phone ring and he answers the call. It doesn't make sense why the gun fiend would show up to Aki's apartment, but Makima doesn't care to address Denji's confusion. Instead, she orders him to not think of anything while he fights. While Power states the obvious, that the person at the door has to be Aki since she recognizes his scent, Denji selflessly tells her to leave. He takes a step towards the door, then another. A long hallway extends the shot, and he reaches for the doorknob. Miss Makima must be playing a prank. Right, Aki? We find out Makima had part of the Gun Devil possess Aki's corpse for two purposes. 1, ruining Denji's found family, and 2, having Denji kill Aki with his own bare hands. For the first time, Denji is racked with overwhelming guilt. And like always, Makima swoops in at the perfect moment. The apartment scene is Fujimoto at its greatest. The inverted power dynamic we typically see between men and women in Shonen is disturbingly subverted by Makima preying on Denji's trauma. It starts off with Makima offhandedly sharing another patronizing life lesson, once again strengthening the image of her as a wiser, superior figure, while still upholding a facade of genuine care. We see Denji follow Makima's orders in an almost fugue-like state, as she leads him back to her apartment. Makima does her usual insincere flirting with Denji, and he takes it seriously, again. And for a second, Denji looks as if he's starting to feel better, and we see Makima at her least composed. A smile, one which is cemented in Denji's mind. But Fujimoto uses the pacing of these next few moments to abruptly shift to a tense atmosphere. At this point, we the reader already know Makima is the true villain of Chainsaw Man, and we're holding our breath waiting to see when she'll unveil her inner nature to Denji. We watch in horror as Denji confides in Makima, her face and reaction deliberately hidden from us. She strokes his head and praises him like a pet, while he embarrassingly starts crying in front of her. Makima finally asks Denji what he wants for defeating the Gun Devil, purposefully choosing this moment when Denji's grappling with grief for the first time in his life. Understandably, Denji seeks to escape the pain of self-reflection and accountability. He wishes to be Makima's dog, relinquishing the need to learn, grow, or confront the world's suffering, undoing all of his previous character development. Unable to cope with the fact that his own ignorance might have caused Aki's death, Denji chooses the comfort of submission over the burden of regret. He convinces himself that Makima is smarter and more capable of making decisions. She rewards him with a head pat, and Denji reassures himself that this was the right choice. Until a knock is heard at the door. When Denji asks why Power is visiting, Makima coldly replies, "Dogs mustn't think." After all, this is exactly what Denji asks for, ignorance and complacency, and the narrative immediately punishes him for this choice. Applying a similar visual technique to when Denji opened the door with Aki, Fujimoto builds up the tension until the pivotal moment where Makima instructs Denji to open the door, outright admitting that she's going to kill Power. Power, while holding a birthday cake for Denji's 17th birthday, is executed in front of his very eyes. "Your hands are cold again. You poor thing. Let's go back inside." Makima casually plays with another dog while sitting next to her newly trained dog. When he stops blankly staring and can finally get himself to speak, Denji asks if this is all a dream. After a long pause, with Makima's facial expression hidden for 5 whole panels, a giggle breaks the silence. Then, Makima bursts into a hysterical fit of laughter. It's in this chilling moment that we find out why she did all of this. Like every other antagonist in the manga, Makima's ultimate goal is to get access to Pochita, and in order to do this, she needed to break Denji's contract with Pochita, where he agreed to share his dreams of normalcy in exchange for the heart that saved his life. So naturally, Makima had one sick ulterior motive that premeditated all of her deceit throughout the manga. She must render Denji incapable of living a normal life. By giving him a taste of the belonging he had always longed for, increasing his standard of living, and allowing him to reach a higher level in the hierarchy, Makima made sure that the eventual destruction of that life would be all the more devastating. Once Denji's psyche is damaged beyond repair and unable to recover, she could sever the bond between Denji and Pochita. But I don't think Fujimoto adds details without a specific intention, and knowing how he wanted to explore the relationship between a distorted mother figure and an abused child, then their body language in this scene cannot be taken at face value. I want to be clear, Makima is not attracted to Denji. It's heavily emphasized later in the manga that she never even saw Denji as a real person, but only as an obstacle she had to get rid of. But Fujimoto's inclusion of symbolism is damning. I'd like to make the argument that this entire scene is meant to be an allegory for the dynamic between a groomer and a sexual assault victim. From the beginning, Makima systematically took advantage of Denji's emotional vulnerabilities, applying her superior intellect and authority to exploit Denji's lack of experience in life. This creates an implicit power dynamic where she infantilizes Denji while reinforcing his submission by rewarding him for compliance and punishing him for thinking independently. Makima uses Denji's ignorance about the root cause of his lustful desires in order to trick him into trusting her affection despite her actions lacking sincerity. And now, Makima suddenly demands Denji to take his shirt off. He hesitates, and she intimidates him. She forces an uncomfortably close proximity as she places her head on his lap, something Denji would have previously been ecstatic about, but now it just feels foreign. With his chest exposed, she touches the one thing on Denji's body which interests her, the chainsaw cord belonging to Pochita. She begins to forcefully resurface the one traumatic memory Denji's been repressing since childhood. Denji's mind employed a common trauma response where he hid any bad memories behind a door. Makima opens that door and reveals how Denji's father did not actually off himself, but that Denji murdered him one day in self-defense. Denji's self-loathing and deep-seated guilt explain why his emotional growth is so stunted. He's already accepted ignorance in his own mind by refusing to confront his traumatic experience, and his mind continued to repress the negative emotions associated with his past. As a result, Makima knows exactly how to gaslight Denji into internalizing a belief that will prevent him from ever forgiving himself or moving past his trauma. The chapter ends with Denji regressing back into his childlike self, demonstrating his powerlessness in response to Makima's grooming. Makima asks the child if he has the right to live a normal life, and the boy responds with a defeated, "Nuh-uh." Denji lays on the couch, his face hidden, his agency over his own mind and identity stripped from him, while Makima casually eats her lunch, without an ounce of remorse for what she's done. To an outsider, this panel would seem normal or slightly weird, but now, with the added context, it becomes infinitely more disturbing. This mirrors the aftermath many victims experience after becoming aware of the true nature of those who groomed them, and the outside perspective of those who do not know the truth. Makima noticed how naive and neglected Denji was. She then framed herself as a parent-like figure who was meant to be his savior. She then isolates him from a support system and mentally abuses him until he feels like he can't leave her. If that isn't a tactful allegory for how real-life groomers trap their victims in perpetual states of dependence, I don't know what is. We watch Denji's gradual development into becoming a well-adjusted teenage boy. Any intimacy that Denji was desperately craving and grateful to receive has now become distorted in the cruelest way imaginable. All of that being said, I am glad that Chainsaw Man is marketed as a shonen because I think a good depiction of psychosexual trauma is something that younger male audiences might benefit from. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I encourage you to leave a comment with your thoughts and like and subscribe if you'd like to see more essays in the future. I would like to take the time to thank my first ever Patreon subscriber, Charlie Bruce. If anyone else would like to join the crew, you get early access to videos and your name on the honored shipmates list. Anchors up, catharsis out.